keep politics out of football. That's what they said. And I told you last time and the time before that we can't do it. We can't keep politics out of football. They are like this, right? Inseparable. And it turns out the same people that said keep politics out of football now seem to believe that, hey, maybe there's room to negotiate. Maybe politics and football can work together if it benefits them politically. Trust me, there's a lot to touch on today's episode. Welcome back to the Keep Politics Out of Football podcast. I am your host, Remy. This is episode 3. A lot has happened since the last episode. The Carabao Cup final has also happened, and I made a video about that and my thoughts on Arsenal and Arsenal winning the quadruple. I'm going to make another Arsenal video next, now that we are also out of the FA Cup as well. And a lot to touch on there. But today we are talking politics and football, and we've got a jam-packed episode for you. We're going to start with Nigel Farage at Portman Road and all the chaos that ensued after photos of him at Ipswich Town Football Club's stadium doing a stadium tour with a name on the back of a shirt went live. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to be talking about the new tailgating law, which made it a criminal offence to enter a football stadium during a game without a ticket, which got introduced starting at the Carabao Cup final. So we'll talk about that. We have our on-pitch politics segment, and this week we're talking about Italy and, of course, their failure to reach a third consecutive World Cup. For some, it's unfathomable that a nation like Italy can miss a third World Cup in a row, but others don't seem to be that surprised. Anyway, keeping on the international break, we will also be talking about my feelings about the international break more generally, and then looking at how some of the games during this international break, especially in America, were seen as a case study for how things are going to run in the World Cup in the summer. And so, taking a look at that and some of the plans for fans in America. So nice billing. Nigel Farage at Portman Road, tailgating law, on-pitch politics, talking about Italy, talking about the international break, and looking at the World Cup and seeing what the plans are for fans and, pricing, etc. It's not looking good, can't lie. Let's kick the episode off. Again, I want to say thank you for listening. If you are listening, if you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple, if you're on TikTok and you're just seeing a clip and you like it, please follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Okay, so let's start with Nigel Farage at Portman Road. He posted pictures last week of him at the home of Ipswich Town Football Club, Portman Road, holding a shirt that says Farage on it, in changing rooms, looking very comfortable, looking very cozy, looking like he was invited there, looking like everything was all right. So he posted that. Obviously, I think Farage and Reform have targeted or have identified, that working class, young, male, football fan, voter that they're trying to go for, and have started making forays into the football industry. I remember, might have been last year or the year before, they dropped a football shirt, like a Reform FC top, stuff like that have shown me that they are definitely more than interested in wading into football. Obviously, being a football fan from London, my view of football fandom in the country is a bit skewed, because obviously it's very multicultural and diverse in London, naturally. But I know that in other parts of the country, things aren't as diverse, and I'm not saying that there's a direct link to the rise of the far right or Reform, etc. But if young men who are disenfranchised, who are feeling outcasted by the government and society more generally, and these young men are meeting en masse every week in large groups, drinking, going out, that's a great time to reach these people, have these conversations. Do you know what I mean? And I think Reform have seen that. I think during the World Cup, we're going to see way more of it as well. Reform are not going to slow down in terms of how they are using football to target these young working class white men. And I'm not saying that to demonize them. I'm saying that that's the target. That's the people that are going to vote. If Reform want to win an election, they need to get these people to vote for them. And yeah, they're going to use any tactics or methods or strategies to do that. And football is a no-brainer. In the same way that, the Greens and Polanski are using like nightlife and they're doing raves, etc. It's the same thing, tactics. They're going to the people that they think will vote for them. I would like to see the Greens try and foray into football and stuff like that. And, good luck to them if they try and do that. But I do remember though, there was a while ago, the fan flags. I don't know what they're actually called, but the fan made flags with the things in the four corners. And then I did see people making kind of tongue in cheek lefty Zach Polanski ones. And I think there is an avenue there for the Greens and people on the left, your party, if they're even serious about doing anything other than infighting, but people to use football to get these people, because I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that these guys are going to vote Reform. I don't think that it's a done deal. I do think that if they are exposed to people like Farage, then eventually that will erode away and they will become more and more influenced by that. But by the same token, why can't more liberal, left-leaning politicians do the same thing? They can. They just choose not to, or they don't know how to do it. They seem scared. They feel like they won't be liked straight away, which will be bad, so then they don't do it. But they are losing ground to people like Farage. Because even though, and I will get back on track, even though Farage got a bit of backlash when he posted the pictures at Portman Road, it's a slow normalization of these figures and the fact that we'll come onto it now, but so Farage posted the pictures. Of course, everyone went a bit yo, Ipswich, are you guys good? Then the club went out and said, oh no, he didn't, he just got a tour and he bought a shirt and he paid for it himself, etc. And then I think the CEO sent an email out to employees saying, we don't endorse his policy, etc. Nigel Farage though said that he was invited, and that's the truth, because it's come out now that there's text messages between Farage's team and the CEO of Ipswich Town Football Club, Mark Ashton, and his team trying to arrange a meeting. So clearly they did have a meeting and he was definitely invited. I mean, the idea that Nigel Farage can walk into any establishment and it not be a flags are raised. Do they really think that we are dumb enough to believe that Nigel Farage just happened to want to go on a tour of Ipswich Town Football Club stadium, get a shirt printed out, go to the changing room, and that was completely spontaneous and no one flagged it, no one called anyone, no one said, oh, is this okay? Should we just hold him here for 5 minutes while someone comes and clears this? Do you know what I mean? Anyone who's worked anywhere, any job knows there's certain risk assessments that you got to make, and yeah, so that was a whole bunch of BS that clearly wasn't true and no one believed. But Nigel Farage says, yeah, I was invited. It turns out he was invited. And yeah, so whatever Mark Ashton and Nigel Farage were talking about or wanted to meet about, it wasn't to do with tactics on the pitch. More than likely, it was to do with how Mark Ashton could help Nigel Farage. They probably talking about their shared aims, their shared goals. Do they share the same vision for the country, for the future of what this country looks like? I don't know what the CEO of Ipswich Town wants with Nigel Farage or what they're planning, but whatever it is, it can't be good, and it can't be good for Ipswich Town Football Club. And now their manager is now having to say, oh, the fans need to rally behind the team. And I feel sorry for the manager, because this is the last thing that he needs. He's trying to fight for promotion to get back to the Premier League because they got relegated last season. And McKenna's just like, yeah, guys, like, he doesn't want to be dealing with this. He doesn't want to be dealing with whether the CEO is like pro reform and now like the fans are conflicted. He doesn't need that. The players don't need to, like, do you know what I mean? It's just like, this is the case. And it's so annoying because like Nigel Farage is the bandit of like keeping politics out of football, but now using football. But he is an example of the ways in which we want to keep politics out of football. I don't believe that like, Nigel Farage should be at football clubs doing all of this stuff. Neither should Keir Starmer. But, have some sort of initiative. Maybe, work in the community. A lot of young boys and girls play football on the weekends and they need facilities, they need equipment. What's your plan to improve those facilities, to give free football club, during the summer holidays or for the Easter holidays? Where are these plans in your manifesto, any of your talking points? If you are going to use football as an avenue to, win votes or whatever, at least do it with care. At least give before you take. And it's like with any other industry or any other like sort of group that you're trying to appeal to, there is a sense of like you got to kind of give to get something back in return. But with football, it's never like, oh, we're going to invest in, academies or grassroots football or youth clubs. It's just like, oh yeah, we're going to go to the stadium, take a picture. And it's like, yeah, try and like get a little moment on social media. It's careless. It's absolutely careless. And like, I hope that, as we see more politicians get involved in football and, the World Cup and it's coming home and all of that, I just hope that we see that reflected when it comes to policy and what they're actually talking about in terms of supporting football as a community, as a industry, etc. But yeah, highly unlikely, I know. So now that after it's come out that they did actually meet with him and he was invited, they released a statement and they said something that I found quite interesting. They said, yeah, the club will continue to engage with representatives from across the political spectrum as part of its role within the community. I find that a bit strange because what is its role within the community? Is it to introduce people within the community to political leaders? Is it meant to be the conduit in which people can come to Ipswich Town and then that can be fed into, policy and politicians? Are they meant to like, what is the role of Ipswich Town Football Club within this community? And where within that role does having Nigel Farage at the stadium come into play? I don't get that. And if that's the case, if that's its role within the community, then when are they going to bring Zach Polanski, Kemi Badenoch, Ed Davey to Portman Road? I don't know. I don't think we're going to see that, are we? So it's just strange, very strange behaviour all around. And like, Kieran McKenna does not deserve this, man. He does not deserve this. They're chasing promotion, trying to get back to the Premier League. They were there last year. They don't need this. The fans don't need this. The players don't need this. And, it's clear that Farage and Mark Ashton are willing to use Ipswich Town as a political pawn. It's that insignificant to them. The idea of football and what a football club means and fans. You're so insignificant to these people that they are willing to play around with your image at a whim. Think about that before you, yeah. Anyway, my whole thing on it, right, is like, you are who you are. If you're a football fan and you happen to be a politician, you can't change that about you. But we can see when it's genuine and when it's not. And there's different, people have different vibes and it comes across a different way. For example, Nigel Farage doesn't strike me as a man who's particularly invested or cares about football. So whenever he does get involved in football, I'm automatically looking for the real motives behind his actions. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, seems to be a football fan, has gone to Arsenal games and, whatever. But up until this point, has never really tried to leverage that, never really tried to, push that. I'm just a working class fan just like you. He has never tried that. And I don't think he will because he knows it won't land. But I do think that there is a way in which, like, you can do that genuinely. For example, in America, Mamdani is a clear football fan. Mamdani is a great example. I just watched a thing with Action Bronson, and he's like sitting down, and then like naming footballers, talking about Materazzi and Zidane. Like it's like that's genuine ball knowledge shown in a way that's like, okay, cool, I get it. He actually did watch it. Like he's spoken about, the old days of Arsenal and Bentner and Shamak and them man. So I know he's lived it because he said it. So if I'm an Arsenal fan and I'm in New York, that's a guy that understands me. Do you know what I mean? He ain't got to do nothing with the club and a photo shoot and Mamdani at the Emirates. He ain't got to do that. It would be far better for Nigel Farage to drop some elite ball knowledge in an interview and like slowly like I've tried to appeal to the football fan voter and like wear like an old vintage England top. I should be a political strategist. Because I don't think that these football fans are a foregone conclusion when it comes to voting for reform. I think they can be won over. And if a political party just gets it right, the right branding, the right sort of like, if they work with Umbro or even forget Umbro, but just like buy all the vintage, like old England gear, tracksuits, sweaters, match tops, I'd started like rocking it, styling it. It would hit. Did a couple campaigns where they get like the old stars and like do like a new capsule collection with Gascoigne on the back, Lineker on the back, Shearer on the back. They could even go back as far as like Bobby Charlton and them man from '66. If they did like a football tournament during the World Cup where it's like all like the retro stuff, but then they have a few like politicians there. I don't know. There's definitely something there tying in the old identity of like England used to be better back in the day, English pride, heritage, but then twisting it with the modern sensibilities of style and, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Let me actually be quiet because I don't want to give away my source. Hopefully the wrong people aren't tapping into what I'm saying. Hopefully the wrong people aren't watching this. But yeah. But anyway, football and politics in the UK, yeah, don't think that's the last we've seen of, this sort of thing happening, especially with the World Cup on its way. Let's hope that the boys bring it home. Thomas Tuchel, you got a massive job, but please win the World Cup. A lot depends on it, politically, economically, spiritually. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. But yeah, next on the agenda. Okay, so yeah, the Carabao Cup final. I don't want to speak about the result. I've already spoken about how I felt after the game. You can go check it out. But at the game at Wembley, a new law came into place. Now, do you remember the Euros 2020 final? It was in 2021. It was at Wembley, England versus Italy. And loads of people went to the game that didn't have tickets and they got in, and I can't really remember the ins and outs of what happened, but all I know is that like it was a big thing on the news and England fans didn't come across very well. So anyway, as a result of that and the conversation around how fans are getting into stadiums, this new law has come into place. It's now a criminal offence to enter a stadium without a valid ticket. And the first person has been charged with this offence. Benjamin Bailey, 27, from Oldham, has been charged and is due to appear at court in a month or so. Oldham, Manchester. Oldham, Manchester City. Manchester City versus Arsenal at Wembley. Benjamin Bailey from Oldham has been charged. Okay, so it was a City fan that came all the way down from Manchester to London to break the law. Interesting. But I do find it funny how people outside of London like to push this narrative that like London is this crime-ridden place. We've succumbed to Sharia law. You can get mugged at any corner. Phone snatchers are everywhere. But yeah, people come to London from Manchester and are caught committing crimes. Do I honestly think that tailgating is a massive crime and, it's that bad? No, I don't. Obviously, when it comes to safety in stadiums, I do think that, we need to know who's in and out of the stadium. However, I know that there is such a massive squeeze on fans when it comes to attending games, whether it's ticket prices, renewing their season ticket, the food at games, the drink, the match shirts, the scarves, the merch. Like, it's a constant squeezing of fans for every penny that they got, to keep football lucrative and keep money within the system. And yeah, I don't think this law is going to be a hill that I'm going to die on. However, I do think that it's maybe a sign of more to come, and we need to keep an eye on how these laws that are going to be brought in are going to affect the everyday football fan, if at all. I don't know if they even will affect the football fan, but yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And yeah, because I had a very difficult Carabao Cup final, I just found that, like, even in the background of that game, and what's happening on the pitch, there was a lot happening off the pitch from a political lens, that didn't really get spoken about that much. So yeah, I thought I'd touch on it. So if any of you had plans to try and enter a football game without a ticket, don't, because you might get charged, like Jonathan Bailey, 27, from Oldham. Yeah, Oldham. Came from Manchester, to London to commit crime. I see you. And yeah, I don't want to talk about the Carabao Cup final anymore. I think what made it worse, a lot has made it worse. Arsenal have lost since, but we also had the international break. During the international break, some teams are playing meaningless, pointless, boring, useless, terrible friendlies, while other nations were fighting for their lives in qualifiers. One of those teams was Italy, and that is where we're going next with our on-pitch politics segment. With on-pitch politics, we like to explore things that are happening on the actual pitch and look at them through a political, maybe socio-economic, racial, gender lens. And today, we're talking about Italy. You will of course seen that Italy have failed to make it to the World Cup this summer. After 2018 in Russia, 2022 in Qatar, they will not be at the World Cup this summer in Mexico, USA and Canada. It's a great shame. Italy should be at the World Cup. They're a great footballing nation. They won the World Cup as recently as 2006. Where has it gone wrong? A lot of people have been talking about where it's gone wrong. Baggio, legendary Italian player, he did come up with a plan to, rejuvenate Italian football, a lot of reforms that were needed. And apparently that plan and Baggio were thrown out. They were kind of disregarded. And, this has led to where Italy are now. But what I want to delve into on this topic is the scorer for Italy in their loss to Bosnia was Moise Kean. He scored in the previous game, and he's their only black player. Similarly, the last scorer at a World Cup for Italy was a black striker called Mario Balotelli. It's interesting. When France won the World Cup in 2018, everyone was talking about where the players actually come from, and it's always a point of contention that European countries like England, France, Portugal have these black players. Well, obviously they do. Colonization. That's how we got here. You do the maths. But Italy is a little bit different. However, I'm sure, and in fact, I know because I've been to Italy twice now, there are black people, of African descent. In my opinion, from my position, far, far away from Italy, I do believe that there is an apprehension, a resistance, a unwillingness to become like France, like Spain, like England, like Portugal, in that a lot of the men's first team is black. Spain less so, but Lamine Yamal, Nico Williams, massive players for them. Instrumental in them winning their last trophy. When France won the World Cup, there was that picture where everyone put their real flags or whatever. England is the same. Saka, Bellingham, Rashford, Gay. Where would they be without all these players? Italy don't want to become like that. Italy don't want to become like England or France. They're too prideful. They are. They are. I don't want to say the R word, but I know I've been to Italy twice. There's a different feeling that I get in Italy than I do get in other countries when it comes to skin color. You know what I mean? And of course, the history of their colonial efforts plays a part in this as well, in comparison to England and France. Big part in this. But I do find it strange. And maybe the strategy amongst the Football Federation in Italy needs to change. Michael Coyote, one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League this season, massive long throw. Imagine if they had Calafiori on one flank and Coyote on the other flank. Do you not watch him every week in the Premier League? One of the best performers in the Premier League this season. It baffles me. It baffles me. And that's the kind of thing that shows that maybe there is some sort of intentional activity going on when it comes to the makeup of their squad. So I'm not saying that, you reap what you sow, but maybe if they weren't so concerned about the colour of the skin of the players that were playing for the national team rather than the quality of those players, then maybe they would have reached the World Cup. I could be going mad here, but Italians have this national pride in Italy and keeping Italy, Italian. But they've let the standards of that Italianness slip. And I think that's a lesson for all nationalists across different countries. It's okay, you can have national pride. You can be proudly British, proudly Italian, proudly French. But make sure that you've kept your culture alive. You've kept the standards high. Because no one's complaining if Italy make it through. But they don't make it through. Time after time after time. So maybe you should get a couple Africans. Maybe you should. Maybe you need a bit of pace. Maybe you need a bit of trickery. Maybe you need a bit of explosiveness. Maybe you need a bit of wing play. I don't know. But whatever it is, DeMarco, the man can't do it for you. Retegui. And that's the thing. Sorry. What made me laugh here is that Retegui ain't even Italian. He's Argentinian. But they're willing to take this 6-foot lump of a striker because he's white and Argentinian. But they can't take a black player that's a baller. Right now, Moise Kean is holding it down on his own. And the thing about Moise Kean, he should have scored a chance in the game as well. So he ain't without blame, but he scored. He scored. He scored. He scored. As this is on-pitch politics, it is very interesting to see how politics and Italy's strategy and ideas about identity is playing out on the pitch. And yeah, maybe things could have been different if they had a different way of thinking and approach the national team, like England or France or Portugal or Sweden, who also qualified. They have Alanga, Isak. They had players like Ibrahimovic in the past who clearly weren't Swedish, but that is part of Sweden's identity. They are a place for people to feel welcome and come and start a life. And those people grow up as Swedish and represent Sweden. In many ways, the makeup of a country's national team is a great visual representation of that country's outlook on society, the history of colonization within that country, and so many other things, and their national identity. The way the Italian national team looks is a visual representation of their policies and their history. And maybe it has led them to the point they are at right now. Something to think about. Yeah, so it was international break. I find international break so boring, especially during the World Cup year. Some players are clearly taking it easy. They don't want to get injured. And some players just pull out entirely. There were a lot of players during the international break from Arsenal that were excluded from their national team or excused or were sent home after examination or whatever it was. Or some did actually get injured during the game. We saw Madueke and Hincapié. But yeah, there was a big hoo-ha about Arsenal and, more dark arts and telling their players to feign injury so they can get a bit more rest over the international break. I don't think that's a unique problem to Arsenal. I think all players are thinking that right now. All players are thinking about the World Cup in the summer. Between now and the end of the season, even during the Premier League and, Champions League, that's going to be in the back of minds of players throughout the season now. It's like, yeah, I want to win today, but also I want to be available for my country, having worked so hard to get there for the past few years in qualification. Imagine like Gyökeres did all of that madness to get qualified for the World Cup with Sweden. And if they were to get injured now, between now and the end of the season, it's gutting. Yeah, these international breaks, they're so annoying. Some players are clearly half-arsing it. They don't want to get injured, and I hear it. Why waste it on a pointless friendly? But some players are going full pelt. Some of the Uruguay squad, what are you doing? Like, chill out. And yet again, everyone becomes hypocrites when it comes to Arsenal, talking about how we're like cheating because our players are coming out injured. Every club does this. If your team is fighting for the Premier League, Champions League, you're going to prioritize your club. You're going to prioritize staying fit over a meaningless friendly. Are we really crashing out, talking about England loyalty? They should never play for England again. They should never play for their country again. Over a pointless friendly against Japan and Uruguay? Don't you want them to be fit between now and the end of the season? This game, we should all be against these games. We should all be against these friendlies. But can you see how these pointless, meaningless friendlies are being used as a way to pit people against their country? Used as a way to signify loyalty to their country. You're going to be loyal to your country and get injured against Japan in a meaningless game when you've got the Premier League, Champions League, and their World Cup to fight for this summer. Are you out of your mind? This international break, there was a game between Brazil and France held at the Gillette Stadium in Massachusetts. This game and a few others are seen as warm-up games for the World Cup, a way for organisers to test how the infrastructure is running during football matches. And one of the ways that that's been tested is the train running from Boston to the Gillette Stadium. The Gillette Stadium is due to host a number of games at the World Cup, and so this was seen as a way to test whether they can get large crowds of people to the stadium from Boston. Between Boston and the Gillette Stadium is a 34-mile train journey that normally costs around $20. But the MBTA, the Massachusetts Bay Transport Authority, they want to raise the prices of this ticket to around $75 during the World Cup, meaning that fans are going to have to fork out large sums of money just to get to the game, let alone the ticket, let alone the food, the shirt, just the train journey. During the World Cup in 2022 in Qatar, it was part of the deal that transport had to be free for matchgoers. And then the Euros in Germany, ticket holders had free transport in host cities on the day of games. In America, there's no chance that's happening. No chance. America is a home of capitalism, the capital of capitalism. And the World Cup is an opportunity to rinse fans for money, more money than they've ever seen in their lives. You see, America loves to talk about the world championships of their sports. They're about to see a real world championships, and they are not going to let that slip through their fingers when it comes to making money. The train ticket, imagine in London, if we hosted a World Cup or a Euros and the TFL was £75 to get to the stadium. We'd riot. It would be absolutely insane. But it seems like there's no one advocating for fans. Aside from FIFA, who clearly are in bed with America and Trump. We've spoken about that on previous episodes, and I'm sure we will speak about it in future ones as well. FIFA aren't going to tell America anything. So no one is getting between America and American companies and American states and transport authorities and, whoever wants to make a buck from the World Cup. Nothing's stopping them from doing that. There's no one fighting in a corner of fans. And that's meant to be FIFA, but FIFA ultimately are letting a lot of people down. When it comes to ticket prices, again, letting fans down under the guise of, we're making it affordable. You're making 5 tickets available at affordable prices. And then the rest is open season. That's not helping anyone. You know what I mean? FIFA are letting fans down massively. And in Boston, we're seeing it manifest. And I wouldn't expect anything less from a World Cup held in America, seeing how capitalism and, free market price movements can just like absolutely ruin enjoyment of these sort of things. We've seen it in the music industry when it comes to concert tickets. We're going to see it now with, match tickets, but also shirts, with also transport. It's a dire time to be a football fan. And obviously, being a football fan from the UK, I'm privileged in my ability to, if I wanted to try and attend games or whatever. But like, even I'm not going to Russia or Qatar, America. They wouldn't let me in. The way I speak about things, they wouldn't let me in. So I feasibly couldn't go to a lot of these World Cups. Brazil, I could have went to, but again, I was like a teenager. Hardly gonna go at like 15, 16. But like that would have been amazing. I always say when anyone asks me, oh yeah, if you can go back in time to any point or any era, where would you go? I'll go back to 2014 to the Brazil World Cup, and I'll be in Brazil. That's all I want to do. But yeah, a lot of people will want to go to the World Cup, and if they do manage to even get to the World Cup and get a ticket, good luck to them. I know that being a match-going football fan is already an expensive game, so I know it's nothing new to them. But yeah, this World Cup is going to be a whole new level. And with that, I do see how like America and Trump and the way that this World Cup is being framed is also like an opportunity for America to benefit, for the economy, the opportunities, brands and sponsorships, etc. I think we've always seen World Cups or hosting a World Cup as an opportunity. For some countries, it's more blatant, the opportunity that the World Cup presents. In recent years, we've seen states in the Middle East, Qatar, soon to be Saudi Arabia, use the World Cup bid and hosting the World Cup as a way to build its national identity globally. Some call it sports washing, and some call it statecraft, but it's like building the identity of your nation around certain moments, but also using those moments where the world is watching you to say who you are and kind of represent yourself. But where Qatar used the World Cup as a way to announce itself on the world stage and, whether rightly or wrongly, present this image of Qatar to the world, America isn't as concerned about projecting its image onto the world. It already does that and has done that, forced its image onto the rest of the world. It's not really about showing the world what America is. I think, in fact, we are kind of a bit scared about what America is, and, we are probably fearful about that part of the World Cup. Because America doesn't need to do this sort of statecraft, this is who we are, this is America. It's now just been left to corporate and financial gain and benefit. That's all it is. I think that the World Cup in America is just an opportunity to make money and to give Trump and his cronies a platform. And before I end, I want to talk about Trump. Yeah, Trump said, I think it's quite a while ago, but it kind of resurfaced recently. He said that he wants to rename soccer to the real name, football, and change the name of the NFL. And it's like, yeah, when the worst person, it makes a good point. Yeah, it is. But also it's like, why is he saying that? What's his real motives? Because I don't think he actually cares. So, but what is his real motivations behind that? And I can't help but feel like the entanglement between FIFA and America and Trump is more to do with power and leveraging football and, having America having soft power like throughout the globe through football. I do think that's the real motive, not getting it right and trying to do the right thing. Because we've been saying that for years. Do you know what I mean? It's not. They haven't suddenly realized that, oh yeah, this should be called football because we're kicking the ball with our foot. Yeah. They haven't suddenly become smart and sentient. They're still as stupid as they were. It's just about, maybe we could benefit financially. Maybe we could have more power in certain areas in the world if we call it football rather than soccer. Do you know what I mean? I don't trust them, and neither should you. And with that, we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I've been your host, Remy. This has been the Keep Politics Out of Football podcast. So if you hear anyone say, keep politics out of football, you tell them, we can't do it. Peace.